Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Terrain Experts. This week, we're speaking to Patricia Figueroa, the owner of Career Glow Up, a career coaching and resume writing business that aims to help individuals get unstuck, find their passion and purpose, and have thriving careers that are fully aligned, that they're fully aligned with and fulfilled by. Patricia is a former Fortune 500 recruiter. Perfect. From Dow Jones and Bank of America with extensive HR experience, and she wants you to live your dream, not dream your life. And today she's going to be teaching you about a consistent hiring process, how to ensure that your interview process, interview feedback, candidate communications, and hiring decisions are seamless and consistent to make sure you're hiring the right people. Patricia, welcome.
Thank you so much, Eman. I'm so happy to be here.
No, thank you for joining us. Like we were just chatting about, I think this is such an incredible topic, and I think so many people need it because every business owner I know has hiring horror stories.
Yes. It's tough because it's so funny, even in recruiting, that happens, unfortunately, like we're the gatekeepers, but the hiring managers make the ultimate decision.
Right.
So sometimes it's like, why didn't you listen to me? But that's a great thing, right? As a business owner, usually like you're the one making that final decision about yay or nay. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here and talking about this super important topic.
Yeah, perfect. So let's start right at the top. When should you be hiring?
Yeah, so everybody scales up in a different way and in their own time. And I know it can differ depending on the industry and niche you're in. But what I say is when the volume gets to be too much, right? Whatever that means for you, if you're approaching or nearing burnout, if you're noticing that some of maybe the admin tasks are falling behind, you're not getting to all your emails, right? Anytime that something is about to like impact the client in a forward facing way, it's probably time to hire help, whether that's somebody you have on retainer, whether it's a freelancer, a contractor, or a permanent employee.
All right. So and that's interesting because like that's something I've struggled with because I always wait to the point where I've hit burnout to actually look for a hire. But hiring sometimes takes a while. So how do you kind of recognize that before you get to the point where things are already kind of falling off your plate?
So this is going to be a do as I say, not as I did, because I waited until I was absolutely drowning. I was doing like 30 resumes a week, 15 LinkedIn profile optimizations, cover letters, sales calls. And I was like, I wasn't sleeping, literally. So what I would say is when you're starting to approach that point though, oftentimes you can tell, right? We wear all the hats, right? At the beginning as business entrepreneurs, if you're starting to say to yourself, okay, if I close even half of these clients that I talk to, I'm not going to be in a good way, get ahead of it, right? Because like you said, Eman, it's going to take some time to get that job description together, to post it, to do the interviews, even if they're video, right? You still got to get aligned with the person's schedule. So yeah, it's a great question. I think kind of intuitively we start to know where it's like, okay, I'm getting to the point where I can't keep all these balls in the air that I'm juggling. Do it then, not when you're not sleeping for 5 days in a row like I was.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I've decided I want to hire somebody. What's the next step?
Yeah, so I truly believe the next step is getting together a very cohesive job description, right? We know as I am speaking universally, like as job seekers, you don't get that sometimes, right? The job description sucks, for lack of a better way to put it. You want to make sure as the business owner, you're probably doing whatever you're hiring that person for. So don't pretty it up, be honest, be transparent, and know what you're looking for. I know from my recruiting days, a lot of times hiring managers didn't have clarity on that, and that caused problems further down the line. So if you can have the clarity around what you actually want in a dream candidate, if you will, it helps to kind of put all those details in there. You don't want it to be too long. You do want to have details. You don't want the candidate to be guessing because then you're wasting everyone's time and potentially talking to people that don't align with the role.
Okay, so slightly controversial question because I've heard mixed things from people. Do you put your salary expectations, sorry, do you put like salary ranges in job descriptions or not?
I do. As an entrepreneur, I know that it was way more complicated in corporate America. I did work for a lot of like big Fortune 500 companies. They never did it, right? They don't want their competition to know what they're paying. It gets so involved. But at least for me, I always wanted that though as a job seeker. So I try to think of like what the candidate would want. Plus, at least for me, I have nothing to hide, right? This is what I'm paying resume writers per document. Also, again, it saves time, right? I can't tell you how many times as a recruiter I would jump on and the person would pump out 10 minutes into the conversation. If you put it in the job description,
Right.
you know, the person knows, and then at least they're aligned in terms of the salary. Yeah, great question.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so I've decided I want to hire. I have a job description. I have the salary in there. Where do I post these?
Yeah. So some people are looking for like contractors, freelancers, someone on retainer, or permanent employees. Sorry, I know that, but it's really those four categories, right? If you're looking for like a freelancer, I can't recommend a site called People Per Hour highly enough. In America, we don't know that as much because Upwork's number one, right? Upwork is great too. I've hired freelancers off of that site. I just think People Per Hour is slightly better. I think the caliber on that site is a little bit higher, but they're both good. If I can really quickly, you didn't ask this, but I would kind of avoid Fiverr. Just my personal experience, I didn't feel like the quality was there. You're saving money, but I question that too, right? I think if the work's not there and you're redoing everything, are you really saving money? That's time equity that you're never going to get back, at least money you can get back, right? So those are great for contractors. In terms of if you're looking for freelancers, if you're looking for like a contractor, maybe you want somebody longer term, maybe they're signing like, a non-compete, right? Like it's a bit more involved. I love Indeed. I think Indeed is fantastic. Not necessarily that cheap though, right? But I do think you're going to get better candidates than a site like Craigslist, right? $25 at least in 2019 when I last used it as a recruiter. So sure, you're going to save money, but again, at what cost to your brand, right? And to potentially even your reputation. So I would say you'd want to do something like Indeed or ZipRecruiter. I'm not telling you to go out and get like a LinkedIn recruiter license for thousands of dollars, but those sites have great reputations for a reason. I've used them extensively on the recruiting side, and I can tell you that there's a ton of candidates on there. You're going to get a quick response. We know as entrepreneurs, you don't have time to waste, right? You get to the point you're hiring, you've got that volume, right? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I cover everything. I would say that for permanent employees as well. And then when you're looking for someone on retainer, that's different, right? That might be more of like a graphic designer that you want to have kind of on tap, right? I would still say Upwork and People Per Hour for that, right? Those are great sites where you're looking for something that's maybe more project based. You're not necessarily looking for someone to work for you hourly or all the time. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you have your job description, you post it on Upwork or People Per Hour if you're looking for freelancers. If you're looking for retainers, contractors, long-term engagements, you're looking at Indeed. And what was the other one?
Oh, ZipRecruiter.
ZipRecruiter. There you go.
That's
okay,
good.
perfect. Yeah. So one of the things that we're aiming to get through today is building a consistent hiring process. So what does that involve, really?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of things. I already covered it, but really quickly, you just want to have that job description that is concise, but it's descriptive and it aligns with what you're looking for in the ideal candidate. We know everything's not perfect in the real world, but if you don't even have the ideal traits, right, you're not starting off well. So once you have that cohesive job description that aligns with what you're looking for and what you need, you want to make sure that you have a consistent process. So what I mean by that is, I'll give an example. If you have your job description posted on Indeed and ZipRecruiter, you want to be looking at the same number of candidates on both sites. So what I mean is, I'm making this up, but if you get 70 responses, let's just say, if you say to yourself, I want to look at 10 good or great candidates before I even start reaching out, right? I'm not going to even reach out to people until I get to 10. You want to have a number. It shouldn't be varying based on the site, right? There's got to be consistency because then you can compare the sites, right? My experiences as a resume writing and career coaching business owner might not be the same as other folks who are maybe in different sectors, right? So you want to have that consistency in place in terms of the number of candidates, right? Then you also want to make sure you are following the same process for the actual interview. Is it a video interview? What's the first step, right? Is it a phone screen? I don't recommend that. I recommend like just jump on the video interview with them. Do you want it to be 15 minutes, sort of, on the short side, or maybe 20 to 30 minutes? It has to be the same for everyone. It's hard sometimes. We're human beings, right? We're not robots. So if you're vibing, so to speak, with the person, you might be tempted to go longer. It's not going to help you. You want to take very detailed notes so that you can essentially have like a rubric, right? You'll go back later. You don't have to get this detail. Maybe it's my recruiting background, but I would actually have a Google sheet and I would rate them on different things, right? Are they detail oriented? Do I think they actually read through my job description, right? I can tell that pretty quickly. Are they easily flustered? There are very specific things that I look for. Everybody has their own intangibles or soft skills. But if you have a rubric, right, like I said, a Google sheet or Excel, and you can drop in some kind of rating system, you'll be able to look at all either 10 to 20 candidates. It's kind of hard to do that if you just take pages and pages of notes. What do the notes really mean? So yeah, I really advise having some kind of rating system that's consistent. You're looking for the same qualities, intangibles, hard skills too, right? Do you want somebody who has experience with the ATS? Again, I've hired resume writers on my team. I do, right? Like that's a big part of my business is getting past the ATS. And then, lastly, I guess, sorry, I don't want to go too long, but you can at least decide, look, maybe she doesn't have ATS, but she does have X, Y, Z. I think people sometimes go with their gut a little bit too much and they don't have sort of the hard facts to back it up. And that can backfire on you, right? This is just somebody you're interacting with for about 20 minutes. You don't know them. But yeah, I would advise just having that consistent process and having it systematized in like Google Sheets or Excel. You can go back to it later when you're actually making a decision.
I love that. And do you recommend that the same person does all of the interviews?
That's a great question. I do. Everybody kind of has their different method for that. Some people, it kind of depends on how big your business is. If you have an HR consultant, let's say you kind of tap into that, you bring on a consultant. I do think it should be the same person. I know that sounds weird. I was on a team of recruiters, right? Just think for small businesses, it's different. If you're at over 100 people, I don't know, that's not really my bag, right? Because my business is a single member LLC. I will say this though, Eman, I'm gonna sorry, I changed my mind. The reason I'm saying this is if you have the Google Sheet or Excel, that's actually the point of it, right? So it's not necessary. We're sometimes control freaks, right? As entrepreneurs, but as I thought through the question logically, it's not necessary. If I rated the person as an 8 for detail oriented, right? We should be able to look at my scores and then compare all the candidates that everyone spoke with. That was a fantastic question.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm thinking about the way we do our process, and then I hate doing interviews. I despise them. So
do you
usually
really?
somebody on the team will. I really do. Oh,
it's awkward, right?
So
I know from when I was a recruiter, it's so mad awkward, right? Yeah.
It's mad awkward, and it's also just like people flake, and I just lose my. I'm like, I'm busy. I can't if you're not going to show up for the interview. So someone on my team usually does it for me. They'll do the first round and then they will shortlist and then they will put forward like maybe their top 3 candidates and then I will just speak to them. And that has worked fairly well for us. But I'm wondering if there are people that I might have like shortlisted if I had done the first round. So it's just interesting to kind of think about. But yeah.
Yeah, but that's also, I mean, as a founder of the company, that's definitely how they should be approaching it. Is like they do the first round, shortlist, give you the notes. A lot of people don't do the rating system. Hey, I just recommend it because at least there's consistency, right? I don't know. What are the notes? Some people do bullet points. Some people say one line. She's okay with comp. She was great. What does that mean? At least, and then your recruiters, at least, or whoever's doing it for you, they know what your intangibles are. It's not always what's in the JD, right? Sometimes you have to read between the lines, and that's getting more towards the soft skills. So again, I think it's just such a great conversation because it's complicated, right? It's not straightforward.
That's so interesting. Like for people who haven't done a lot of interviews, what are some like big red flags they should watch out for?
That's a great question. So I would say, honestly, this is my experience my experience as a recruiter. I tend to watch out for people that I feel are overly aggressively charming. I know that sounds weird. It's good to be a people person. I have a feeling, maybe because I worked for Dow Jones and Bank of America, there are people who come on super strong and are trying too hard to get me to like them. I feel like they're hiding something or they're overcompensating. So it's kind of vague and amorphous, but I hope that helps somebody because some of those people, like, they're so likable, right? They're magnetic. And then they start off and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare, right? So that's, again, more on the amorphous side, but it's something that I've noticed, right? Something else I will say though is somebody who just can't answer, I hope this isn't obvious, but basic questions about your business, or you feel like they didn't read the JD all the way, the job description all the way through. We have a tendency as people, you gravitate towards people you like. Oh, she reminds me of my older sister. That totally has nothing to do with the job, right? But again, if you're vibing and you're talking, you're chit-chatting away, but then you ask a question about terrain and they start talking more about teachable almost. And it's like, well, wait, I'm not hearing anything about entrepreneurship. To give an example, I think we kind of let things slide with people that we get along better with. So I would just warn people to try not to do that because that's going to come back sometimes and bite you later. So
100%. Okay, so watch out for people who are too slick and watch
yeah,
out for people who haven't done their homework about the company.
right.
Okay, perfect. Oh, damn it. I had a question here and it just like walked out of my head.
Yeah,
Oh,
it happens.
I know. And it was a good one too. It's coming. It'll come back.
I'm sure it'll come
It'll
back. Yeah.
So what about people who are introverted or shy, or are those kind of things that you kind of should factor in? How important is culture fit when you're looking at a candidate?
Great question. So I'll kind of address them separately. So I actually have social anxiety. Sometimes people tell me they can't tell, they think I'm outgoing. I'm high energy, but I have wicked bad social anxiety. And it hits you sometimes. As a recruiter, I was told straight to my face, you're too quiet, like we're not interested in that here. So again, you have to be careful because when it becomes too much about personality, you're missing out on great folks who were a fantastic fit, let's say, with the experience, with education, the background, dedication, work ethic, whatever it was that you were looking for, right? But then to your other question about culture fit, I think we, universally speaking, right, have to be careful because it can become homogenous without that being the goal. So there's nothing wrong with how, like we all have, right, as business owners, your mission statement, your core values, of course, right, your tagline. That's great to find people that fit that. But I've noticed, especially in Fortune 500, sometimes when people say she doesn't fit the culture, it's almost an excuse. And it's more meaning, I don't think that we're going to get along with her. And that's what you have to be careful about because everybody can kind of end up looking the same or with the same exact personality. And they've done the studies, you know this, like McKinsey's done the study where the more diversity that you have, the better the company performs. I'm oversimplifying because it was a pretty complex. Yeah. Listen, it's what it found, right? So yeah, I think people have to be careful. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a culture, let's say, okay, Amazon. I know some people are not a fan. They're certainly successful, so fail fast and often. I interviewed with them last year and they were like, no. So that sucked at the time. This is before I started my business. But that's a pretty unique core value that Bezos has for them. Nothing wrong with trying to find someone that fits that. There's a lot wrong with using culture fit and weaponizing it against people whose personality, like, you just don't think it's going to jive with the team. So kind of a long answer, but I think it's kind of complex, right? Because some people are like, do we go away with it entirely? I don't think so, but don't use it as an excuse to get rid of people who you just don't think are going to fit with the team, right? I think it's kind of nuanced, but I hope that answered the question. I didn't think it's
that does, and that does, and I think it was a very interesting argument because a lot of times when people talk about culture fit, they are talking about personality. And when you made that distinction, it was really helpful. So we're looking for people whose values align with those of our team and our mission, but whose personalities, they don't really need to factor really into the decision as long as the work gets done. And, we all have the same shared core values. It's super, super interesting.
Mhm.
But something you mentioned kind of just sparked another question for me. It's, we're all human. We all have some element of bias. I mean, we may be
Sure.
actively working on them,
Mhm.
or, we might be blissfully ignorant, wherever we are on that spectrum.
Right.
um, how do we, as people who are trying to, build a team, how do you kind of mitigate the impact bias has in hiring?
That's such a great question. And I actually did a workshop on it because I think it's so involved, for lack of a better word, right? Um, I can only give you my opinion. I think it almost becomes like we demonize people without meaning to. I understand there are people out there that maybe just don't care about D&I. I don't know. I think there are other people who just don't know how to address some of their biases that they don't even realize they have sometimes, right? So you've got different camps, and I think sometimes we paint with a very broad brush, universally speaking, without meaning to. I think the best way, and it's kind of not everybody agrees with that. I don't think lunch and learns do a lot. I was in HR
Yep.
for over 5 years. The workshops are well meaning. People want to get back to work, just like you do. Like I was running them sometimes, and I'm like, I have 10 phone screens I have to do, right? I think what's better is to have people actually try to experience what that lived in experience is like. Or, sorry, I don't want to say BIPOC because also BNI involves disabilities and sexual orientation and gender identity. So I don't know how to put it, but essentially at the end of the day, I recommended books to them. And people were so surprised. It's like a book. And I was like, yes, because I think you can learn so much because it humanizes it. How many DNI seminars and workshops and webinars, it just becomes like droning on. I think even for the people who are genuine, right? So I guess what I would say is to try to humanize it more because it's kind of becoming very corporatized and it's kind of becoming like turn your Instagram square black and put up a LinkedIn status and then we're done for like the next 6 months. And I think when you have a book or you have an experience where you can start to, for lack of a better phrase, interrogate maybe some of your own thoughts, beliefs, unconscious biases, as you just mentioned. Maybe that's where the change occurs. And I think we're kind of not doing that right now. It's so just like almost dehumanized. Yeah. So, like I said, maybe not a popular opinion, but it's something that I saw myself in HR. And I think there's that opportunity for us to humanize it more and reach more people. And I think we should take it.
No, I love that. So, if you have any books that you'd like to recommend for the community to check out, that would be fantastic. You can send those to me after, and I'll put them in the notes for this. So that's incredible.
Great.
So just to kind of recap really quickly, we talked about recognizing when you're ready to hire, and
Mhm.
then writing a really strong job description that tells people what you're about, including the salary, ideally in that, and then
Mhm.
posting it either on Upwork if you're targeting freelancers, or if you're targeting long-term contractors or retainers, etc., looking at ZipRecruiter and Indeed.
Mhm.
And then
Oh,
you
sorry. Yeah. So after that,
mhm,
I believe, and I'm sorry because I don't want to write as we're going. I believe what we talked about was the rubric. However, someone
yes.
wants to say whether it's a Google sheet and Excel, just having a rating system across the board. You brought up a great point about should multiple people be interviewing, should be one person, and I think if you have that consistent rating system, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows what an 8 is. Now you might give an 8 and I give a 7, but at least there is a rating system in place. So yeah, we talked about that, and then we talked about culture fit,
Perfect.
and sorry, it wasn't DNI, so to speak. I think it
Yeah.
branched off into DNI, if I remember, because sometimes, again, we were saying how culture fit can be used to kind of weaponize
Right.
people, sometimes intentionally, but many times unintentionally. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, all right, we've done the interviews, we've identified our candidates. Is there almost like a post-interview process? Like, is there some way to like, because I found that especially small business owners, the candidates are selling themselves to us, but we're also selling the company to them. We also need to kind of put our best foot forward if we want to get great candidates. So
Right.
how do we as small businesses do that? What's the most effective way of doing that?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because, again, my opinion, but I feel like there's this like anti 9 to 5, like screw corporate America. Look, I left corporate too, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? So I took so much of what I learned as a recruiter. You want to get back to your candidates with feedback within a certain amount of time. I don't mean to be vague, but it is going to differ, right? If you're a larger company and you're talking to a bunch of candidates, you have to allow enough time for the interview process to play out, right? I would say, though, about a week is fair. At least check in, let them know if you're still interviewing candidates, right? But just you don't want to start to come off like you're going to ghost them. Everybody has probably experienced that, and it's unpleasant. Should never happen, right? We're human, we make mistakes, but again, if you systematize it, you can see on your Google sheet if that person wasn't followed up with. You should catch it at some point, right? I would say pick the follow-up time. You have to have SLAs, right? Service level agreements. I know it can sound weird sometimes if it's especially like a smaller business, like less than 25. Still, right? You want to have the process, make sure you're doing it, right? Check it off when it's done. And then, you also should have a kind of thought process of when do I want to bring this person on? We were talking about the fact that we can kind of be stubborn and I don't know another word as business owners, like we wait till the last moment, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, I need this person now. So when are you trying to kind of bring them on? Is it within a month? That's standard in corporate America, right? From the time that the requisition opens to the time that you actually onboard them. You might need the person in 2 weeks now, right? Because everything's on fire. But whatever it is, pick that benchmark and then make sure like you're making progress towards it. And if you're not, make that adjustment. Maybe whatever it is, you need an HR consultant. Do you need a recruiter? Maybe like whatever, if it becomes too much for you, you're not getting through the resumes or whatever the case might be. But I would say it's really important to have timelines, SLAs, benchmarking your progress in a Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet.
I love it. That was incredible. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Sure.
If people want to learn more about you, work with you, how do they connect with you?
Oh, for sure. So you can connect with me on Instagram at Career Glow Up. And also my LinkedIn. It's a long URL because it's my name, but it's linkedin.com/in/Patricia P. Figueroa. So I know that's really long, but I am very active on LinkedIn, very active on Instagram. So they can for sure find me on both of those platforms.
Perfect. And we'll have all of that in the show notes so people
Got
can
it.
grab that and connect with you. This was incredible. Thank you so much.
For sure. I love this. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course.